What's up, world? What's up, internet? I'm Deanna Jean Pierce, and today I would like to talk about and share about my experience, really the tragedy of how I canceled my dream wedding. I canceled my first planned wedding. And the reason I want to talk about and share this is, number one, to process my feelings and my experiences, but also because if you're watching this, I want to help you not make the same mistakes. So if you don't know anything about my story, which you probably don't, I'm married to Dan Thalen. We've been married for almost 2 years, and even though I'm so happy that I am married to this man because he's my best friend, he is my perfect partner, he is my confidant, he is my protector, he's my everything. I wish I had married him sooner when I originally planned our first wedding. And like I said, I want whoever's watching to learn from this, because this is probably the biggest regret I have in my life. And the reason, well, one of the biggest regrets I have in my life, but one of the reasons it's like my biggest regret is the domino effect this had on my entire life. So, and I am very somber right now. I'm very somber because I'm not happy right now. I'm not happy. I'm so happy that I married the love of my life, but we waited way too long. And it wasn't necessary. We planned a perfect wedding with God, and then I canceled it. And I can't go back in time and have the dream wedding I really wanted. Because that specific time where all of the right support had manifested for that experience is now gone. Energy is different now. Everyone in my biological family is in a different place right now than they were years ago when we were originally planning the wedding. The momentum isn't, it's just everything is different. So just to start off this vlog, Dan Thalen proposed to me on my 27th birthday, which was December 14th, 2020. This was the perfect proposal. Literally perfect for me. I love that he proposed to me on my birthday. There was something that was just super meaningful. But also, he proposed to me at a very particular time in my life and in our life where it was really just me and him living with my mom in my childhood home, the house I grew up in. It was me and him, my mom, and my soul cat, Andy. And when Dan proposed to me, I felt like, I guess you could say I was like at rock bottom, if you want to say that. Like at the time, I wasn't even working a job when he proposed to me. I was dealing with what I now know to be autistic burnout. I was dealing with, I had just done my second round of MAP, the mind alignment process. And I was needing a lot of time to process and feel through everything. And yeah, it was just one of those times in life where I just needed a lot of rest. But the fact that Dan proposed to me right then actually made it more meaningful, because he was essentially saying, I love you for who you are, not your status in society or how much money you make or any titles you're holding, or even the fact that you're working right now, because you're not working right now. Like, Dan truly proposed to me in the perfect way at the perfect time. Even the fact that it was my 27th birthday, because, there's that whole thing about like the 27 club, and it was just perfect. When Dan proposed to me, I did not know it was coming. I felt like something special was happening, and I felt a very deep, whimsical, loving energy. And, God kept having me watch the music video for Taylor Swift's song, Mine. And like, I knew something really beautiful was happening, but Dan, he bought the ring without me knowing. He did a very good job hiding it from me. I didn't know what was going on. I was genuinely surprised when he proposed. Like, I'm not kidding. I was genuinely surprised and so happy and so delighted. He said that God told him what ring to get, what restaurant to reserve a table at. He said God just led him the whole way. And of course, I said yes immediately, no hesitation. And afterwards, when we were like driving around in our car, celebrating, the song Holy by Justin Bieber came on the radio, like kind of like right as we turned the radio on. And that was mine and Dan's song. That was mine and Dan's song. It still is. That's like our song. Our song is Holy by Justin Bieber. Like, we really resonate with the music video, and it's just our favorite. It's our song. And when we got home, like, I woke my mom up and I was like, Mom, Dan proposed to me. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's so great. And then she went back to sleep, and then I picked up Andy and like we danced around, and that was that. It was a very holy experience. It was a very powerful experience. And shortly after that, Dan and I were working the same job. I started working shortly after that, and we were working together, and our main focus was moving out of my mother's house. And having our own apartment. But the fact that Dan proposed to me while I was living with my mom, while we were living with my mom in the house that I grew up in, that was the most meaningful time to do it. Dan channeled God perfectly. There could not have been a more meaningful time or place, because I left the world. Like, I left college and, normal jobs behind to move back in with my mother in 2017 to focus on my twin flame journey, to focus on harmonious union. And so it would only be fitting if I was proposed to when I still lived with my mom in the house I grew up in. That was the most meaningful thing. And Dan took me to the most meaningful restaurant possible in my hometown. You have no idea how meaningful that was. Once we moved into our own apartment, our very first apartment together, it was the Preserve Apartments on the outskirts of Beaver Dam, which is my hometown. Me and him and Andy moved into our very first apartment together. And that was such an amazing experience to save up the money and move into our first apartment. And it was really nice apartments too. Once we were there, the energy really moved into, it's time to plan the wedding. And I did that. I started setting about planning my dream wedding. And when I say my dream wedding, I'm not saying it was just my dream wedding and Dan had nothing to do with it. We made all of the decisions together. It wasn't like I was out planning and picking out everything and he was playing basketball. No. We're the type of couple that we did everything together. We do everything together. Even when I was wedding dress shopping, I didn't just go with my mother. Dan came with me and was like pulling out different dresses for me to try on. We don't do things separately. It's just not fun. And so we decided to get married in Mayville, Wisconsin. Mayville, Wisconsin I'm reading from AI Oreo on Google. It's a historic city of about 5,200 people in Dodge County. So Dodge County is the county in Wisconsin that I grew up in. When I thought about us getting married in Beaver Dam, in my hometown, but something felt a little stuffy and off about that. Something didn't feel quite right about that. But at the time, Dan and I were very frequently going to the Mayville area. We would often go and hike by the Ledges, which was kind of in the Mayville area. And we just kind of fell in love with that area. It was super chic, super cute. And there's just something really heartwarming about it that really drew us in. And so we decided to get married in Mayville. And we set a date. God told me the perfect date. And that part came through me. And it was July 15th, 2022. And so we set the date. We found a venue that was really affordable It was the Mayville Golf Course. Oh, and even as I'm looking at it right now, I'm so emotional. I'm so emotional. Like, I can't believe I gave this up for anything. If you can see, this is the venue. This was the venue. Absolutely gorgeous, absolutely perfect for us and for me. And so, yeah, it was going to be July 15th, 2022 at the Mayville Golf Course. We found the perfect place to get our wedding cake. It was a place called Sweet Peas, which is a bakery in Mayville, and we went in and like talked to the people there and, you know, tried out different treats from there, and we decided on our wedding cake. And one of the sweet things about it, the fact that it was called Sweet Peas is really cute, but also the woman that we talked to, who kind of was running the shop, she had moved and relocated from the Twin Cities area. And that was super meaningful for me because the Twin Cities area in Minnesota is where my dream college is. And it's where I want to return to eventually and finish my college degree. And so the fact that the person who would be making my wedding cake was from, had been previously living in the Twin Cities, that meant that our wedding cake would be infused with the energy of the Twin Cities. Minneapolis, St. Paul, if you don't know. And we found an officiant. My mom paid for like the security deposit for the Mayville Golf Course. We hired a photographer. I was actually someone who did like photography and DJing. It was like a bundle. And I made like a Spotify playlist of all the songs I wanted, and even like the order of the songs. I can't. I ordered wedding invitations from Zazzle.com. Evergreen and cotton flowers. I will show you. See that? The wedding of Daniel and Deanna, July 15th, 2022. This picture for the RSVP we took at Devil's Lake in Baraboo, Wisconsin. I just feel like I'm not ever gonna forgive myself. So everything was set. The date was set. Like I said, we had the cake planned from Sweet Peas. We had an officiant picked out. Everything was ready. And I literally mailed out all of the invitations, okay? And God had set everything up perfectly so that I could have my dream wedding. Even my childhood best friend at the time, who I won't say her name in case it makes her uncomfortable, God kept sending her to where Dan and I worked at the time. And God kept trying to have us, connect. And one time when we invited her to our apartment, our first apartment, we were hanging out, she was like, well, I'm so happy for you that you're getting married. I don't know how you're getting married, but if you need like a witness, let me know. And one of my soul sisters also was living in Beaver Dam at the time. Not my mom, another soul sister. She had opened a crystal shop, Tender Spirit Reiki. So it was like Reiki spiritual crystal shop. She had opened Tender Spirit Reiki around July 2021. So, and we were getting closer with her too. And what God was trying to do, and through her new moon Reiki drum circles that she was doing and connecting with her, we were developing this support system, and God was bringing us closer to my biological family as well. God was trying to orchestrate this beautiful, perfect dream wedding for us. And it was at the perfect time, in God's perfect flow and in God's way. Everything was perfect. Right after my mom gave us money to help pay for the deposit for the venue, I believe it was the venue that she helped pay for, my mom said that she heard the song Heaven is a Place on Earth by Belinda Carlisle on the radio. That was God's perfect timing. That was God's perfect date. That was God's perfect location. God had set the stage for an experience for me to have my dream wedding. I even recently came across pictures of us signing off on the wedding venue paperwork, and we had like a glass of champagne to celebrate. God just had those pictures pop up for me recently. And what happened is that I was on YouTube one day and I came across, I don't know how, I don't remember. I came across a leaked video on YouTube of inside footage from Twin Flames Universe and the Church of Union. Dan and I were banned at the time, so we didn't really know what people were saying or what was going on at the time. I saw a leaked video someone posted, and I don't know if it's still up or anything, but essentially the leaked video said that essentially if you get married outside of the Church of Union, that Jeff and Shalia would not support that they don't support that. Like, you can't get married outside of the Church of Union. They won't go for that. And I freaked out, okay? I freaked out. I did not want to be out of alignment with God. And while Dan was asleep, I canceled the entire wedding. Dan woke up one morning and I had canceled the entire wedding. I had contacted all of my family members and every single point of contact. And I called the whole wedding off. Oh, I forgot to mention, Dan and I also had our dream honeymoon planned in Door County for right after the wedding. We were going to stay at the White Lace Inn, which is, if you don't know, I'm just reading from AI Overview here. The White Lace Inn is a romantic award-winning bed and breakfast located at 16 North 5th Avenue in Sturgeon Bay, Door County, Wisconsin. It features 18 distinct guest rooms and suites spread across 4 restored turn-of-the-century Victorian homes connected by garden pathways and a white picket fence. We had our room booked. I don't remember which room we had booked at the time, but we had so much fun picking out the room. And we were gonna get like a video camera and not just have the wedding filmed, but also film our honeymoon in Door County. Everything was set in place. And I canceled it. Just because I wanted to be loyal and faithful to the Church of Union and to Jeff and Shalia. And you might hear this and think, well, good, you should have canceled your wedding. You should stay faithful to the Church of Union. Hold on. God sometimes does things and orchestrates situations so that I relate to God as a feminine being, so that she can love you more deeply. I also relate to God as Father God, both. But God wanted to give me that experience of having my dream wedding and my dream honeymoon. That's what God wanted for me. Because I saw that leaked video and I felt sick to my stomach and I didn't want to be I didn't want to do something wrong. I canceled my dream wedding and my dream honeymoon. In the moment, it felt like the right thing to do. I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is wrong. I need to wait until we're back in the Church of Union to get married. But that was not actually the right thing to do, is what God is showing me. Here's how I know that was not God's will. First is how I feel. I feel like I lost the most beautiful and perfect wedding experience of my life. Dan and I moved out of Beaver Dam, my hometown, after that, and away from Mayville. And I also, once we moved out of Beaver Dam, I went through a phase of thinking like it just needed to be just me and Dan. And I actually like cut out my biological family and like told them not to talk to us ever again. And so Dan and I were extremely isolated in Baraboo. That was not God's will. My soul sister, who had been running Tender Spirit Reiki, she ended up closing her shop down, and she's off traveling now. My mom doesn't live in my childhood home anymore, and she's retired. My uncle, at the time that we were planning the wedding, was running the Beaver Dam Community Theater. So there was just so much energy and support that had manifested so that I could have my dream wedding and honeymoon. And instead, I really felt like I was betraying the Church of Union and Jeff and Shalia. Excuse me. And so I canceled it. But here's the moral of the story that I really want to communicate. You have to do what feels right for you in the moment, and you have to do what's loving for you in the moment. Even if other people don't like it or don't agree with it, or even if they tell you flat out that's wrong to do, because you are the one that has to live with your choices. You are the one that has to live with your choices. No one in the Church of Union has to be me and live with my choices. I personally think it's 100% okay to get married outside of the Church of Union if you're following the flow of love for you. What's actually right for you. There are plenty of people who have gotten married to their twin flames, such as Paris Hilton or, Megan Fox. They got married at the perfect timing for them, on their perfect wedding date, their perfect location. And, one day everyone will get married in the Church of Union, but if the flow of love for you is heading towards something very specific and meaningful, my advice to you is to move forward with that, because you can't go back in time and recreate that. I can't recreate that. Everything is different now. My uncle who lives in Beaver Dam, he's working on moving far away from Beaver Dam. My other uncle who was running the Beaver Dam Community Theater at the time we were planning the wedding isn't doing that job full-time anymore. He's in a transitionary phase. Like I said, my mom retired and moved out of my childhood home. Everything was energetically set up perfectly for that Mayville wedding on July 15th, 2022. And what I should have done is, instead of emotionally reacting to the leaked video, what I should have done is talk to God directly, because I'm never going to live in my hometown again. Dan and I got married anyway. We got married anyway outside of the Church of Union. We just did it a couple years later, and we did it in Madison, which wasn't as meaningful. That all of the people that I really wanted to be there weren't there. Dan and I just went to the courthouse, and we just kind of did our own thing. And it was meaningful. Believe me, I'm not saying it wasn't meaningful, but we got married in the fall instead of the summer. It was a different date. It was a different energy. And here's the thing. Had Dan and I gotten married at the right time, in the right place, in God's flow for us, in the momentum that God was having us in, that was love's flow. Okay? That was love's flow. Had we gone forward with that, not only would I have been way happier, way more peaceful, it would have been way sweeter. It would have been so much sweeter. I would have had emotional and social and energetic support from other people in our life, instead of just Dan and I doing things alone. Madison is a very important city to me, but that original wedding and that original wedding date and those original circumstances was actually the most meaningful thing possible. So, I'm not sure if you are aware of this or not. Probably not. Most people don't know this. Dan knows this. But I went through a very large phase of believing that Dan was not my twin flame. Starting around the fall of 2022, I started feeling that Fabian was my twin flame. If you don't know, Fabian is, he was a live student in Twin Flame Ascension School, Life Purpose class, and he's in the community, and he's a coach, and And that really culminated and came to a head when I saw a pink lotus in Sunday service in August 2023 with Fabian's name on it, because I had changed my profile photo on Facebook to a pink lotus. And so when I saw that in the meditation for the Sunday service, it was in particular in the Sunday service, Let Go of Addiction and Move into Happiness on August 6, 2023. I saw, the pink lotus with Fabian's name on it in the meditation, and I stood up. Dan and I were both watching it. I stood up on the couch and I pointed at the TV and I said, I knew it. I told you this whole time. I was right. And then I destroyed my life. I destroyed my life. I destroyed my life. I quit my job. I moved back in with my mother in Beaver Dam, which was not God's will, by the way. God actually tried to stop me through the radio and through Dan Thalen, but I didn't listen. I got rid of a ton of my stuff. I took a sledgehammer to my reality, because I was like, this is what God has revealed, and I have to go in that direction completely. And so I broke up with Dan, quit my job, moved back in with my mother. And that was the worst thing I've ever done. I also got rid of my soul pets, Andy and Amelia, who are also twin flame cats. They are now in 2 different locations with 2 different families. I got rid of things that I would do just about anything to get back. I had a framed, when Jeff and Shalia sent Dan and I a bouquet of flowers after we did our first Sunday sermon in boot camp after them, that came with a little piece of paper on it where they're basically blessing us, telling us we did a great job and how we were carrying their light forward and carrying the torch and bringing it forward. And I had framed that piece of paper, and I got rid of that because I'm like, well, it's connected to Dan. I tried to get rid of everything connected to Dan Thalen. I'm like, we're no longer, everything. And then I started getting severely ill. I got a sinus infection. I literally bought a cheap air mattress, and my entire body was hurting. Sleeping at my mom's house. I was sick. I was exhausted. I started getting Alzheimer's symptoms. Dan had to come and rescue me. He had to leave work and come rescue me when I almost passed out at work due to the stress and the Alzheimer's symptoms. And I'm talking about severe Alzheimer's symptoms. I'm not talking about mild. I'm talking about severe Alzheimer's symptoms. Severe sinus infection and illness. I was essentially like on my deathbed. I was dying. It was not God's will. I took a sledgehammer to my entire foundation because I believed God was asking me to leave Dan and be loyal to the church and to Fabian. So you can see the pattern here. I receive what I believe is communication from God through the leaked video, through Sunday service. And then I take a bunch of action in that direction. And then I lose. I get screwed over. I get hurt. Dan has spent hours of his life, hours of his time, helping me understand that Fabian is not my twin flame. The church sent me an email years ago saying, we're not sending you secret messages in Sunday service. Please seek psychiatric help. And so I did. I got on medication, which I'll talk about that some other time. I would never go back on medication. And then Dan started writing me love letters, and he mailed them to my mother's house. He came to Beaver Dam. He came to my house unannounced. He came looking for me. He was always there whenever I would call him. He said one of the things he said in his love letters was that he felt like we were just like Noah and Allie from The Notebook. And what Dan did is he talked to God, and God told him to move to Madison, which is the capital of Wisconsin. It was closer to me. It also has more job opportunities. Now, what God's plan was for us to move to Madison together and do jobs together, continue working together. But as you can see, and I've talked to my therapist about this too, I immediately take external action when I receive new information, especially if I think it's God through the Church of Union or God through Jeff and Shalia. And that's not appropriate. That is not an appropriate relationship to have with anyone, even a guru. That's not safe to immediately change your life and take action because of what someone else says. So that's something I'm working through. Dan and I have talked about this for countless hours over the last few years. Countless hours of Dan saying, Jeff and Shalia would never communicate to you through a Pink Lotus and Sunday service. They would just reach out to you. They would never put you through something like that. Fabian's not your twin flame. I'm your twin flame. Like, we have spent hours and hours and hours talking about this. And Dan re-proposed to me in Madison. And then we got married in Madison. But it wasn't the same. As you can see, ego and the devil leads us astray. Had Dan and I gotten married at the original perfect dream wedding, I never would have gotten rid of my cats and quit my job and, experienced all that extreme stress just because, if Dan and I had been happily married and secure and then I saw like a pink lotus and Sundays, it was like I wouldn't have immediately reacted and tanked my life. I would have been like, well, I'm married, so you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying? God had a plan. Now, Dan and I are talking about having a vow renewal. But as you can see, as you can tell, like, God was trying to have Dan and I go deeper into love and relationship. What happened when I canceled the wedding? What happened when I canceled the wedding was that I then started pushing all my relationships away. That was not God's will. I suddenly told everyone in my biological family, I don't want to talk to you guys anymore. You don't love me. You don't care about me. And like I said, things are so different now. It was supposed to be Mayville, July 15th, 2022. My best friend from childhood was supposed to be there. My whole family was supposed to be there. And like I said, now things are different. At the time I was planning the wedding, my mom was still working in Madison. She was still living in the house I grew up in. Everything's just different now. And I can't ever go back and have that experience. Getting married to Dan was still, God made sure it was extremely beautiful and meaningful. Don't worry, I didn't have a meaningless wedding, but the original energy and momentum and all of the support that God had orchestrated for the original wedding wasn't there. And so what I really want to encourage you to do is that when love and God and the momentum of your life is heading somewhere, it's safe to see that through, especially when it comes to weddings. My advice is to go with your original wedding plan because you can always do vow renewals later. You can always do vow renewals later. But that original energy, it's only there once. That original energy is only there once. Now everything is really different. Mayville's a really small town. It was in the same county I grew up in. It was sweet. There was a lot of innocence. There was Sweet Peas Bakery and everything. You can't go back. And we didn't get to have the full wedding experience. We didn't get to have that. We didn't get to have that full experience of all of that support. You know, I was trying on wedding dresses at Designs for You in Beaver Dam, and we were going to get the flowers from Jean's Beaver Floral. That's where we were going to have our flowers from, is Jean's Beaver Floral in Beaver Dam. And that time is all gone. That possibility is gone. And I can't forgive myself. I don't forgive myself for getting rid of Andy and Amelia. I don't forgive myself for canceling my dream wedding. I can't forgive myself. The whole reason I moved back in with my mom and shut down all other aspects of life, and I put college on the back burner, and I put working in the world on the back burner, and I put everything on the back burner I moved in with my mom in 2017 specifically to focus on my twin flame journey. Getting proposed to in my hometown on my 27th birthday while I wasn't even working. It was just me and God and Andy and Dan and my mom. That is the most meaningful proposal that I could have possibly experienced. And the wedding that we planned was the most special and sacred and sweet and heartwarming wedding that we could have possibly shared. And I don't forgive myself. Dan, God bless him, he literally is always telling me, you know, everything's perfect, everything's okay. You can't go back in time. God bless him. But that was really what God wanted for me. And God gave me the time and space and energy to focus on that wedding. And God sent me the supportive relationships and the supportive energy, the support system to have that experience. And so the moral of the story, if you're watching this, is don't let external influences sabotage what you know in your heart God wants for you. Don't sabotage love in your life out of guilt or fear or anything. It wasn't worth it to cancel that. Dan and I got married anyway. It was just later and in a not as special way. Still special, but you know what I mean. I don't want anyone to have regrets like I do. I want everyone to have their perfect wedding and their perfect honeymoon. So